All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Well, technically, I think it's morning. Thanks for being here. Today's webinar is going to focus on how to start composting at home with your new earth machine. My name is Amy Dunsmore. I'm SWACO's education specialist. I'll be leading the discussion here today. I'm also joined by a couple guest speakers. I'm joined by my colleague, Lucy Schroeder. She's SWACO's Food Waste Initiative Coordinator. And then I'm also joined by Katie Reese. She's with the City of Upper Arlington, and she'll be discussing more about the program, how to pick up your compost bin. And then I'm also here with Jeffrey Brown. He is the owner of Brand Builders, and this is the company that actually sells the earth machine all across the country. He has been selling the earth machine for over 30 years. He's very knowledgeable, very familiar with how it works, troubleshooting issues. And so we'll be hearing from him at the end. So he'll do a demo of how to put together your bin, and then we'll provide time to answer any questions that you might have regarding the compost bin or the earth machine. So real quick, a couple housekeeping items. For those of you who have not used the GoToWebinar platform, I just want to make a couple notes for you. There is an orange arrow that's on the top of the control panel. If you click on that orange arrow, it will expand a list of options for you, okay, within the control panel. The most important part of the control panel is the questions and chat feature. So this allows you to type in your question at any point during the webinar session. So if as we're talking, we're moving along through the slides, you have a question that pops into your mind, go ahead and type it right into that question box, and then I will be answering all of those at the end. As a friendly reminder, everyone is on mute throughout the duration of the webinar, so we shouldn't, that's just to help limit background noise. So if you do have a question though, please feel free to type it in the chat. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lucy Schroeder, SWACO's Food Waste Initiative Coordinator, to tell us a little bit more about why we're here today and more about the Food Waste Awareness Campaign.
Great, thank you, Amy. As Amy mentioned, my name is Lucy Schroeder. I'm Food Waste Initiative Coordinator with SWACO. So we recently launched a food waste awareness campaign last year called Save More Than Food. And the concept was all about how do we engage residents, food businesses, schools, and workplaces to understand what they can do to reduce food waste in where they are in their everyday lives. And so thank you, each of you. I know you've been engaging with some of our content because you are receiving the earth machine. So we know you've been reading some of our material. So thank you for your participation. And we look forward to a second round of surveys. I know you've filled out the first coming up in the next couple months. And then also a second round of waste audits, and then we'll get to share some of our learnings with you around what food waste reduction is taking place in Upper Arlington and how the campaign is helping to support that. So a big thank you to each of you, and a big thank you to Katie and the City of Upper Arlington for hosting this study with us. We also are working with Ohio State University, some of their professors, to make this survey happen. And so with that, I'll pass it off to Katie. She'll tell you a little bit more about the details of how to get your earth machine and some other opportunities for engagement.
All right, hi everybody, I'm Katie. I'm with the Public Service Department here with the City of Upper Arlington. And we will have your compost bins for you available for pickup next Friday, so Friday, May 21st. You can stop by our Public Service Center on Roberts Road. So the address is 4100 Roberts Road. If you remember from years back when you used to have to drop off your yard waste, we're right next door. So the first driveway before you get to the yard waste facility, you just pull in the driveway, we'll have them there for you. Just give us your name and you'll be able to pick it up. If that day and time doesn't work for you, don't worry. Just send me an email or give me a phone call and we can just schedule another time that works for you that you can come pick it up during business hours. So yeah, if you have any questions or if you need anything else, just give me a call or send me an email. And then also we have, if anybody is interested, coming up next week, I believe both next week, or one's Friday and then one is next week, sorry. We have 2 more webinars that Lucy and I will be hosting as part of our the food waste study that we're doing. So on Friday, this Friday at 11:30, we're talking more about backyard composting. So if you guys are interested in that, obviously it's kind of some tips and tricks on how to use your new composter. And then on Wednesday at 11:30, next Wednesday, we'll be talking about some helpful information about how to reduce your food waste at home. So some interesting things about, organizing your fridge, things you can do at the grocery store. So lots of interesting information if you want to join us on either of those. And I think did we throw the links in the chat maybe, or we can send them out? Yes, we'll send out the links to how to sign up for those webinars. We'll throw those in the chat.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie, for the reminder. I was getting sidetracked by other questions. Okay, so
We'll get them in there later, no hurry.
okay. Yeah, I'll make sure to put in the registration links. They're also on the website, Michael noted, but I'll be sure to put those in there here shortly. Lucy, if you happen to have access to the links, would you mind dropping those in for us real quick? That might help save us a little bit of time so we can keep moving along with the presentation. All right, so real quick, we want to talk about why reducing food waste is important. So many of you probably are already aware that 76% of the materials that the Franklin County Sanitary Landfill receives could have been diverted either through recycling or composting. So we're a growing community. More people are moving to Columbus, Ohio, Upper Arlington in particular. It's the place to be, and more people means more waste. And so we know this because we recently did a waste characterization study, which basically just tells you the types of materials that are being thrown away in the trash in our community. And a lot of it is compostable material, recyclable material like boxes and cans, and then other recoverable items that had the potential to be reused. So let's talk about the number one type of material that's received at the Franklin County Sanitary Landfill. That is food scraps. That makes up about 15% of the total waste stream. It's also equal to about 1 million pounds of food waste entering the landfill every day. And so, as many of you are already aware, when we landfill food scraps, instead of eating our food, we lose the natural resources, the money, and the opportunity to feed hungry members of our community. And so something else that's even more surprising to me, is to see that 27% of the materials in the landfill, they have the potential to be composted. So this is including your organic materials like your yard waste, compostable fibers, things of that nature, which can all go in your earth machine bin. And we'll talk more about that here shortly. So as opposed to going to the landfill, organic waste can be returned to the environment in a beneficial way through composting. Through properly disposing of organic waste, such as food scraps and yard waste, it has several benefits. Real quickly, the top 4 benefits here: it's going to save landfill space. The less space we designate for landfills, the more land we have to use for other resources. Number 2, it's going to save money on landfill tipping fees. It costs money to dispose of waste at our local landfill, and you can help save your community, Upper Arlington, landfill disposal fees. Number 3, it improves soil quality. So compost improves water retention, soil structure, and the ability for soil to absorb nutrients. This is really helpful since here in Central Ohio, we have a lot of compacted clay soil. Number 4, it's going to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases generated. So a little quick science lesson: a byproduct from the decomposition of organic materials is landfill gas. That is comprised of methane gas and carbon dioxide, both of which are powerful greenhouse gases. Even though SWACO does have a way to mitigate the release of these gases into the atmosphere, it's still the preferred choice for the planet to capture these organic materials through the act of composting or creating mulch. Some of you may be sitting here thinking, well, I'm a little intimidated by the process of composting. It seems overwhelming and too scientific for me. It's really not. It's not just for farmers anymore. It's becoming more and more prevalent and popular among urban environmentalists. And these are people that are looking to cut down on the amount of landfill contributions. So as I mentioned, when we're wasting valuable resources by landfilling food, composting is a quick and easy way to make nutrient-rich soil in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. And your garden, your topsoil in your yard, and your potted plants will all greatly benefit from this. Compostable material is all around you. So just look around, start to think of the world in a different light. A common way to think about compostable materials is breaking them down into categories called your browns and your greens. And this often holds true as well to the type of color that the material actually is as well. So let's start with the browns. Your browns are going to be your dry, fibrous materials. So this is going to be fallen leaves, twigs, pine needles, corks, shredded paper, cardboard, and even weathered straw or hay. And then we have our greens. This is going to be your nitrogen-rich material that's typically fresh or a wet material. So this is going to be things like grass clippings, your food scraps, your banana peels, your avocados, grass clippings, coffee, and tea bags. So we're not going to dive into this too deeply because there's a lot of theories out there about the proper amount, the proper ratios, the proper balance. Okay, and I'm going to try to simplify it for you today. So it's called the brown to green ratio balance, and I really don't want you to overthink it. Okay, you'll often see recommendations for the balance to be about 70-30 split, so or double the amount of brown material to that of green material. An even better way to think about it while you guys are managing your earth machine is to think about it in terms of weight. So for every 1 pound of food scraps that you add to your earth machine bin, you want to also add in the equal weight of your brown carbon material. So if you put 1 pound of food scraps in, also make sure you're adding 1 pound of carbon. So things like shredded paper, cardboard, and or leaves. That'll help make sure that your earth machine has a really great balance and it's a smell-free decomposition. Another quick tip, and Jeffrey's going to go over this more here shortly, whenever you do add those green food scraps or the yard waste, you want to make sure you add that brown layer on top of it. So that'll also help deter any flies from visiting your bin. And if you should forget what should and should not go in your earth machine bin, do not worry. Jeffrey thought about this many years ago, and he designed the Rottweiler guide. And this is just a quick educational guide to remind you of what should and should not be placed in your earth machine bin. So don't worry about, you don't have to memorize it now. You'll always have that. You'll have this, it comes with your earth machine when you'll pick it up on next Friday. All right, so now we are going to watch a demo video here about how to set up your compost bin. So this is a YouTube video. So for those of you who are watching the recording right now after the live session, this YouTube recording will not record. And so what you'll need to do if you're watching after the fact is you'll need to go to YouTube and type into the search how to assemble your earth machine. There's lots of videos out there online about how to put this together. You'll also get an instructional guide that shows you how to put it together too. But sometimes I think it's nice to watch videos to help us guide the instructional process. But for those who are with us today, we're going to go ahead and watch this video. Bear with me while I bring it up. All right, so that was Jeffrey showing us how to assemble the compost bin, the earth machine. And then residents here in Upper Arlington will also be receiving an additional component to the earth machine. It's the rodent screen base, and that was not shown in the video, but Jeffrey is going to explain a little bit more about how to assemble that rodent screen on the bottom of your earth machine. Go ahead, Jeffrey, take it away.
Hey guys, nice to meet you all virtually, and thank you for your interest in composting. Yes, it's true, I've been doing this for about 30 years, which is pretty amazing. I came across composting and this compost bin while doing a trade show a bunch of years ago, and had the opportunity to sit next to this factory that was producing them up in Canada. And it just struck me as the most logical thing that everybody should have in their backyard. And I've been trying to convince everybody of that ever since. So I'm glad you guys are joining. So yes, that was me doing that instructional video. I don't even remember when I did that, but I think I covered everything except for this item. So the rodent screen is an interesting item. If you're composting correctly, meaning putting in the things that Amy mentioned, browns and greens, basically. So you're putting in your fruit and vegetable waste, grass clippings, leaves, things like that. There's nothing in there really that a rodent is going to want except for maybe a warm place to sleep. So the rule, really the point of what I'm saying is, as long as you're keeping the proteins out, meat and dairy and fish and things that are going to rot, backyard composting is not going to create a rodent situation. You're not going to be attracting rodents because you're putting coffee grounds and banana peels and grass clippings in your composter. I guess it keeps them honest. It keeps them out, and it'll prevent any chance of having something crawl in there. So you'll see in the diagram where the arrow is, there's two notches that are cut into the rodent screen, maybe about a foot apart. And those two notches will line up with the front door. So if you take that that image there of the compost bin that shows where the anchor pegs are, and you were to flip it upside down, and you're now looking down on the compost bin, that's where how you would assemble and attach the rodent screen. So it snaps right into the footprint. It's made for the Earth Machine, so it should fit perfectly. But again, the quote unquote trick is to find those notches that those are cuts that are into the plastic sheet that line up with that front door, and then everything else should be kind of logical as far as how to snap the rest of it into the bottom of the composter. Feel free to put a twist tie or a string to tie it, and then when you turn it over, it'll stay in place. But it snaps in, and it does stay in place pretty well when you turn it over. When you are done and you have everything assembled, try to find a nice convenient spot in your backyard so that even in the middle of the winter, but on a daily basis, it's not going to be too far or too inconvenient for you to go and put your food scraps. I accumulate like 2 buckets worth of material on my counter, which I bring out to my bin maybe twice a week, and it's black coffee, coffee grounds, banana peels, peelings from leftovers from salad, no dressings, oils, sauces, gravies, or anything like that. Nothing that's going to make my composter become anaerobic or stinky. A little common sense, if you're just dumping all your stuff into the top of the pile, and you have strawberry tops and cantaloupe and other fruit and vegetable waste, and you're not burying it into the pile, in other words, putting a layer of dried material on top of it, you probably do have a good chance of opening your pile and having it smell like rotten fruit and vegetables and maybe some fruit flies zooming around. So keep that in mind when you're adding the material to the pile, that you want to incorporate this new material into the compost bin. So you want to add a layer of dried material on top. So that kind of, taking a step back, you're looking at what you're putting into this bin. You're putting in dried stuff, dried leaves, dried grass clippings, and fresh stuff. So right now you may not have a lot of that dried material available. So where can you get the dried material? You can dry out grass clippings. You can use shred from a paper shredder and other materials from your home. Cereal boxes can be torn up, paper products like that, junk mail, newspaper. That can also serve as your dried brown carbon-rich ingredient for the time being. But in the fall, you may want to consider setting up an area where you can accumulate some leaves so that this time next year, when you go put your fresh material in there, you'll have a source for that dried material as well. And again, about equal amounts by weight. So you want to have a decent amount of dried material. What I do to prepare my composter for the winter is I load it up with as much, pretty much as much brown leaf material as I can, and then in the winter I just kind of make an opening in the top and just keep dumping my organics into it. You don't have to worry about keeping it moist or turning it. You just want to load it up with as much material, and then in the spring you give it a good mix, and you have a great head start to getting your first batch of compost probably towards the end of the spring, beginning of summer. So my best advice is to fill it up. The more material, the hotter the pile is going to get. Keep in mind surface area, the more chopped up the ingredients are going to be and smaller, the faster it's going to become compost. So if we're putting in ears of corn and stalks of broccoli and little twigs and vines, they're definitely going to take a little bit longer than if it's shredded grass clippings and leaves. Keep it moist. The piles should be moist like a wrung out sponge. You don't want it to be too wet, but you don't want the pile to dry out either. We're giving the opportunity for little microbes to help break down the material, and because they're living organisms, they need water and they need oxygen. So that covers the water part, and the oxygen part is why we use an aerator and we turn the pile from time to time. That's an activity that you might do every week or two. It just kind of depends on how much you're putting in your pile and if it's in need of a turn. And again, as you saw in my demonstration, the goal is to vertically mix the pile. So we want to get the finished material from the bottom where the microbes are and the worms and all the good stuff's going on to mix with the new material. So a good turn and pulling material up is the way to accomplish that. So thank you for your interest. I hope you guys are all excited to start taking all those banana peels and coffee grounds that you've been accumulating and putting them in a good spot. Again, I recommend filling it up as much as possible. And if you have the opportunity to find a little compost that's already happening on your property, maybe there's some leafy material that wasn't picked up in your fall cleanup and it's partially breaking down, maybe there's some worms underneath there. If you can throw that in there as a starter, that would be fantastic. So any compost pile that's already going, if you can dig deep into that pile and get some of that material into your composter, that's a great way to get started. I don't think at this time of the year you need to go out and purchase anything to help start your compost pile. You've got plenty of green, nitrogen-rich ingredients like the grass clippings and your food scraps, and that's going to be what really brings your temperature up in your compost pile. So if you guys have any questions, send them my way, our way, and happy composting.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. That was a wonderful tutorial on how to set us up for success. Real quick, I have a question for you, Jeffrey, and I think this could be useful to the participants here today. If we don't have an aerator tool, can we just use maybe a shovel or a pitchfork to kind of turn the bin? Would that be appropriate as well?
You can try to do that. The goal is, again, to pull material up from the bottom to mix with the top. So unfortunately, and it's common with really all backyard compost bins on the market, the opening isn't really huge. It's kind of limiting as far as, how deep you can get in there and how easy it is to turn something like a shovel or a pitchfork. So you can certainly try it. And see if it works. Some people have like these garden claws that they want to use. So, at the beginning, it's not critical as critical to turn the pile because the pile is kind of light and fluffy at the beginning and there's not a lot going on. But it's when the material breaks down and becomes very dense and heavy is when you're going to really have the challenge to turn the pile. And that's when you really need to start incorporating the materials. So at the beginning, you can kind of experiment with maybe what you've got on hand, and see if that'll work in your pile.
Wonderful. And then
I do recommend an aerator, I guess.
Yeah, and then Jeffrey, if someone was interested in purchasing that aerator tool that you discussed in the video, do you know where they might be able to buy that?
Yeah, I do sell them, and I do have them in stock. So what I would recommend doing, economically speaking, because for me to ship to people's homes it costs probably more than it costs for me to sell the aerators. So if you want, maybe as a group, if people want to put in the question box or whatever, if they want an aerator, I sell them for $25 each, but I would sell them as a group for $20 and just ship them maybe to one location where everybody's picking them up. So if I shipped a couple boxes, or a box, they come 12 in a box, I'm happy to ship them. But again, if I go to somebody's home, it's like $25 just for UPS. So if that makes sense for everybody, then great. If only one or two people want them and you still want me to ship them to your home, I'm happy to do that, and I'll try to find the least expensive way to ship it. But UPS is kind of getting expensive for some reason to ship to residential addresses. So again, I'll do my best to keep the price down, and if you guys as a group want to make a purchase, I'll be happy to work in finding a way to make that happen.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. I do see a couple of people typing in the chat box that they would be interested in purchasing an aerator. So maybe Katie, I'll work with you to see if there is an interest, if we can get at least 12 people and for us to order a box of these aerators for the residents of UA. So I'll get with Katie afterwards so we can touch base on that.
Great.
And then
I'll ship however many you want. So if it's only 10 people, I'll be happy to send whatever you need as a group. I'll send it out. But
wonderful.
If we get a bunch of people together and I can ship it to one address, shipping is like the same amount to send it to one business address as it is to send to, that if I would accumulate all of them and send them individually, it would be a better option for everybody.
Thank you for that. And then a few more questions coming in here for you, Jeffrey. Can you tell us the dimensions of this unit? Someone said that maybe it's 33 by 33 inches. Is that right?
Yeah, the footprint, the bottom is about 33 inches in diameter, and then the height is about the same 33 inches in diameter. It comes in 2 pieces, and it can fit in fact, because it comes nested, I can actually fit about 4 or 5 of them in anyone's back seat. I'm a little bit of a magician. I've done some funny things as far as, people have shown up with like somebody in the back seat, and we've still gotten like, 2 rain barrels and 3 compost bins, and the grandmother's still in the back seat. So people are always amazed how many things that we can nest together and get to fit. So don't be nervous if you think it might not fit. That's not a problem at all.
Wonderful. And then there was a question about the best type of brown material to accelerate your composting process. So someone asked a question, are dry leaves better for composting compared to paper or cardboard boxes?
That's a good question. Well, I would say in general, leaves tend to be a little bit waxy, and waxy kind of affects the carbon nitrogen ratio that we didn't talk about, but talked about a little bit. And so imagine if you're using straw or hay as your brown versus paper. So certainly paper is going to be less waxy than straw or an oak leaf, and it would be a better choice and work faster than if you had waxy leaves. So yeah, I would say, and that's probably the first time I've ever had that question, but it's a good question. I think that paper products would certainly be a better option, but leaves are definitely more abundant. Don't be afraid to use them when they come pouring down in the fall. They're a great feedstock for your compost bin, and they're probably the primary one. If you have a good recycling program and they're picking up your paper curbside, they probably prefer that you do that. But until you get your materials lined up and have the opportunity to stockpile some leaves in the fall, that may be your only option to make that happen. So yeah, I think it's a great start using leaves. I mean paper products. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and then I just as a tip too to those who are thinking ahead to the fall and stockpiling your carbon sources, I do actually steal my neighbor's leaves. I ask them, I'm like, hey, do you mind if I grab your paper bag of leaves? And they're like, yeah, knock yourself out. So I try to store a couple bags over the winter just to add materials to my compost tumbler. So it's another free source of material. If you don't have ample amounts of like shredded paper or cardboard boxes that you're using. And then someone also asked a question about composting paper towels and napkins. Those are all a yes, as long as they don't have any chemicals on them. So I would not place anything that you use to clean up if you're using like bleach or some sort of antibacterial soap. Or any sort of chemical that you're wiping surfaces off with, I would not place those in your compost earth machine bin. But if it's just from eating, yes, absolutely, those will break down in your compost bin, no problem. And then Monica asked a great question about adding the compostable material that is inside the compostable bags and the bags. So I'm going to take this one because it does get a little bit confusing when it comes to backyard composting compared to industrial composting. And so the industrial composting with the compostable bags, that composting process gets to a really high temperature, that is able to break down the components of the compostable bags, the bones, the meat, the dairy products. Those are all sorts of things that really don't belong in the backyard compost bin, because our backyard compost system just doesn't reach the high level, the high temperatures to break down those, that type of bacteria and those type of fibers. And so I would not place, you can still do the food scraps, the coffee grounds in your earth machine, but I would not put the compostable bags in there, because those really aren't going to break down. It's going to take a long time for them to break down. And I would also skip the meat, the dairy, anything with fat on it, dressings, like Jeffrey said, in your earth machine, because that could potentially cause flies, bad odors, and you do not want that present in your backyard bin. Alan asked a great question about tossing the coffee filter in with the grounds. That is a-okay, absolutely. If it's a paper coffee filter, that will break down very quickly, very easily. So put that in there. Now, if it's a plastic coffee filter, no, we don't want to put plastic in our earth machine. L. Olson asked a great question about citrus peels and if they take a long time to break down. In my experience, they do take a little bit longer compared to that of like an avocado peel or a banana peel, but don't be afraid to put citrus in your earth machine. It will break down. Just make sure to aerate it, turn it, give it, make sure it has moisture, has access to the beneficial microbes, and those peels, the citrus peels, the eggshells, while the corn husk, while they might be around for a while, the corn cobs, they will eventually break down. So don't be afraid of it. As much as you can, if you can chop them up into smaller pieces, that means that it will break down even faster. But I don't break mine down, just so you know. I just throw them right in there, and they do break down within about 6 months. All right, so here we go. Yes, someone asked a question about eggshells. Absolutely, put those eggshells in there. Eggshells will take a little bit of time to break down, but no worries. Let's see, Jennifer said, in the past I've tried and I've gotten slides. What do you do once you notice fruit flies? Yes, so Jeffrey, do you have any experience with mitigating fruit flies? Like once you have them, what can you do to get rid of them?
I have the easiest and best solution for getting rid of fruit flies. You go to your compost bin, you see the fruit flies, they're swarming around. You put the lid on the ground and you walk away. And then you come back in half an hour or an hour and they are all gone. So that's the easiest solution. Another solution is to take a layer of dried material or wet newspaper and just cover the top surface of the compost pile, and that'll also get rid of them. So you want to seal off their source of where they were coming from. And again, it's easy just to leave the top off and walk away and not deal with it. Or again, like I said, just cover them up and they'll go away.
Cover them up with the brown materials, correct? Yeah,
you can wet newspaper and put it over the top, or just from your source of dried material, just put it in there. Give it a mix and put that in there, and they'll disappear.
Excellent. Thank you for that advice. Someone also.
Now, another thing, I want to just quickly add something that people eventually, or they'll also ask about, other types of things, whether it's pet waste or things that are, chemicals on their lawn. One big factor, if you're using your finished compost to grow edible crops, so you're going to grow fruits and vegetables and things like that, you want to be a little bit more careful than if you're just taking your compost and you're going to put it around your flower bed and use it to, help in an area that may be a part of your lawn that's not growing well, or whatever that your intention is for the compost pile, for the finished compost. But again, if you're using the compost and you're going to be eating vegetables and stuff like that, definitely take more care in what goes in it. And you mentioned like cleaning solution on your paper towel and stuff like that. And, you know, if you have lawn doctor come in your house and spraying insecticides and things like that, be more conscious of, you know, being sure that material is not going to get into the soil that you're then using to grow your vegetables.
That's a really good point, Jeffrey. Thank you for bringing that up. And another question came up. Carla asked, how do you keep yellow jackets from nesting in your pile? Do you have any experience with that, Jeffrey, in your 30 years of selling the Earth Machine, if that ever happens?
Look, they'll make nests in all kinds of kooky places. So I don't think I've ever had anyone with that issue. You know, you certainly don't want to spray it with a insect killer or anything like that. So you want to be careful with that. I'd say just, you know, maybe like you would with if the nest went somewhere else, you know, anywhere else that you wanted to get rid of it, you know, approach it in the evening when all the bees are in their nest and somehow carefully encapsulate it so you can remove that, because otherwise it certainly is going to be tricky and difficult and dangerous maybe to operate your composter if you're continually dealing with that. But they tend to go back in the evening. I don't know that they'd find it to be a good place to make a nest. I mean, you know, same thing with rodents. You know, you're going in there on a regular basis and you're moving things around and you're making noise. I think it's not probably the most desirable place to build a nest. So again, I haven't really had anyone contact me with that kind of a situation. So maybe it's something that doesn't happen very often. Hopefully not.
Yes, hopefully not. Hopefully we're actively adding materials and we're disturbing around the compost bin so the yellow jackets don't feel comfortable building a nest there. So I'm sorry that has happened to someone on the call today. And so hopefully that does not happen again. Just always make sure that when you're adding your green materials, your food scraps, you're also adding a nice healthy layer of brown material on top of it to discourage any pests at all from frequenting your bin, because you don't want those in your yard. Well, that looks like everybody's questions for today. I want to thank everyone for your attention. I hope you feel inspired to continue to reduce the amount of food waste that you create, and any of those food scraps, those cantaloupe rinds, avocado peels, you can divert through your new Earth Machine compost bin. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to all of our guest speakers. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions about how to pick up your compost bin, please contact Katie Reese with the City of Upper Arlington. And happy composting. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.